Well, welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. Oregon getting the 21-point victory over Maryland to begin that series history with the Terrapins. We'll break that down on why the Ducks looked a little sloppy in that game, and then also set the stage for the matchup against Wisconsin. Huge road game for the number one undefeated consensus top team in the nation, Oregon Ducks. Then we'll also look around the Big Ten. May Indiana possibly crash the party and disrupt an Oregon-Ohio State Big Ten championship? We'll let you know, but let's go ahead and introduce the rest of the fellas. We've got former Oregon quarterback Joey Harrington, Anthony Newman, former defensive back, and Aaron, I think you were a punter.
You know what?
What did you play?
I've seen people in the comments section actually telling me to shut up and go punt. So that's kind of like taking on a life of its own. I actually played wide receiver in high school and in college. I never punted, but it was a funny joke when Newman launched it a couple years ago.
Blew you up. I know that.
Oh, you would. You almost had your opportunity.
And we got
I told
the
you I was
band back
invited
together,
to walk
right?
on Oregon.
I love it.
Fall of '86, your senior year, you would have had many of opportunities. But I think something told me no. Finches, don't go to
Joey,
Oregon. Newman will kill you.
Let's get to this kind of sleepy victory for Oregon. This was just a kind of gray, mid-November, no history with Maryland. You're expected to beat them by a lot. You've had a lot of emotion in the last couple of games. You're kind of just waiting for the inevitability of playing in the conference championship game. The Ducks look kind of sloppy, right? This was not a buttoned-up performance. They get the win, but tell me, is there a reason for possibly this game being a little sloppy? Is there a psyche as far as how long this season is? You've been there before. Take me through what you thought from this Oregon performance.
I don't know if there's a reason, but I think it was the best thing that could have happened to him. I mean, this was exactly what you needed at the exact right time against the exact right team. I mean, this was a kick in the pants. It was a light a little fire under you coming into this home stretch, because we looked at the schedule. How many weeks in? 11 weeks, 10 weeks?
Oh gosh, yeah. This was like 11 or 12 weeks ago.
And we all circled this Wisconsin game coming up. Wisconsin, Washington at the end of the season, and then going into a potential Big Ten championship. Like, the drag of November, the pressure of November, it's real. Guys are tired. Guys are dinged up. And now all of a sudden you start to throw a little bit of pressure on top of it. This week against Maryland, a really below average team that came on the roads to play at home for Oregon. An Oregon team that's a little bit dinged up, just lost their offensive lineman, that lost their number one receiver. Like, this could not have been a better timed wake-up call for what is about to happen for the rest of the season. I don't care what the records, the statistics say. Like, you are now the number one, consensus number one team in the country. Everybody is hunting you. You are going on the road as the pressure builds into Camp Randall, which is going to be absolutely crazy. This is where it hits the fan. And the fact that they had a game like that to wake them up and realize, like, we're not just going to be able to kind of walk through this. I think it was perfect, actually.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, that atmosphere. I wonder if they drink beer in Wisconsin. That'll be fascinating to see the fans. But Anthony, this game against Maryland, the wake-up call for Oregon, do you agree with Joey? Was this at the right time? And is this what you want to see from the number one overall team as they get set for two emotional games, going on the road at Wisconsin, then home against Washington to wrap up the regular season?
Oh, yeah, I agree. They're kids. They're going to make mistakes. They play, 10 weeks of football, in-season play. That's a lot of football. It's a lot of weeks. You're not perfect. And you're going against a team that they're not very good. When the coaches talk about this team plays hard, you know what that means. They're not very good. But when you win by 21 and you make a lot of mistakes, and you don't have your best players, you're pretty good. You have a lot to learn from. You have to move forward. But Joey said it. This is the time to make those mistakes, to understand. I think even Dylan Gabriel said it in the press conference, that we needed this. We needed a wake-up call. And it's hard to go undefeated. I mean, how many teams do it? It's almost impossible, but it happens. So it's a wake-up call for the players and the coaches as well.
All right, Fentress, wake-up call, or is this a sign of maybe Oregon showing some weakness with these injuries that they should be concerned about going forward? I mean, listen, it's hard to have that edge week after week, especially when you get to number one and you've already beaten Ohio State and Michigan, those huge games, to kind of keep that edge because there's nothing else to chase, or is there more to it than that here?
You know, I've been wrestling with this since the game ended in terms of how I'm going to frame that game for this show.
Be careful, they'll get you in the comments.
I know. And my feelings about Oregon haven't changed at all. I think they're a really good team that you throw into a mix of 8 other teams and you just kind of flip a coin as to who's going to win the national championship. I do think they're vulnerable in that field, right? I don't think this game heightened that or lessened that at all. I give credit to Maryland for finding a way to get a drive and score to make it 29-18, 11-point game, was that what it was? But other than that, I mean, it was pretty much similar to the other wins. I mean, they won, other than that touchdown, they won by about the same. They didn't appear as dominant in that they didn't completely blow it out of the water in the first half and then cruise. But I kind of felt like I gave credit to Maryland for showing up, unlike Illinois, unlike Purdue and other teams. And I do think not having Tez Johnson-Hurst, because that guy turns short passes into big plays, and I think not having him definitely limits your passing game somewhat. I think we saw that. Jordan James left the game, after the first quarter as a precaution, so you didn't have him for most of the game. And they still took care of business. They forced two turnovers in the fourth quarter when they needed them. And so I kind of walk away feeling the same way. Like, I don't feel like they lost any luster. I don't feel like they gained anything. And I still think it's going to be very difficult to beat them until the Big Ten championship game.
Aaron, I got a question for you. Did Maryland earn those 18 points on offense? Because realistically, Oregon could have shut them out. Oregon beat themselves or allowed those points because of penalties, personal fouls. When you have a defensive back that you keep grabbing a guy and the official's going to keep throwing the flag, at one point you got to understand this is a learning process. You have to understand, I can't put my hands on this guy because the officials are going to throw the flag. I got to cover him with my legs. And that's what you have to learn as a player as you get into these games. Oregon, they had fourth down stops, and it was a face mask, personal foul, pass interference. And you kept giving them drives in the red zone. If you give somebody 20 chances to score at the 10-yard line, they should score. I'm just asking.
Ooh, Newman's fired up.
Yeah, I like it, Newman. First segment.
Man,
he's now, question here, a little bit off topic as far as the game itself. Some fans were saying it was a very sleepy atmosphere. And is this a result, guys, of Oregon being number one and just coming off the hype of Ohio State and at Michigan and the momentum with that, the fact that you have no history with Maryland? Or would this have felt the same if Oregon was still in the Pac-12 and this was, say, Arizona coming to Autzen Stadium for this week or Cal coming this week? What do you think led to, kind of from a fan perspective, not the most hype around this game?
I think that, let's not forget, Aaron, you're big into recency bias. Let's not forget how everybody was complaining about the student section during Marcus's years, right? They'd all show up for the Stanford game, and then they would, for the rest of the games, they'd file in late and they'd leave early, right? And so people were trying to figure out a way to get the students to stick around. Like, it's the same thing with, you remember when Nick Saban was, literally pleading with people to stick around till the end of the game at Alabama. Like, you're literally the best team in college football and you can't get your fans to stick around. It's because they're bored. I mean, to answer your question, Jordan, is would there have been more excitement if it was Arizona? Sure, maybe a little bit, but it's still the number one team in the country cleaning people up. Like, there are 2 or 3 games that are circled on this calendar, and that's what everybody's focusing on. And until the team shows otherwise, that this is going to be a potential issue, like the Maryland game is going to be an issue, then you show up thinking, what did we all say last week? Like, we didn't even talk about it because we thought it was going to be such a blowout, right? So what do you think the fans are thinking in the state? Like, yeah, that's the nature of college football.
So 2 points.
Aaron, one last quick thought.
Okay, 1, this proves that Bellotti was wrong when he told you, Joey, to not wait till the second half to play because you kept fans around. 2, I thought, you guys know, I have a daughter at Oregon, and last year she went to some games, but then she didn't go to some others, and she told me they were boring because Bo Nix and the company were just destroying teams. And so, yeah, I think, and plus you had such a huge emotional win against Ohio State in a classic, in a game that's arguably a top 5 win in program history, at least for the regular season. And then after that, you got a bunch of lemons. And you're just sort of waiting around because you know there's no one that can really touch you until you play that team again in the Big Ten Championship. So of course you're not going to have the same level of enthusiasm. Why would you?
All right, we got to take a break. We've gone about 37 minutes over already in our first segment. But when we come back, we'll dice this game up a little bit more. We'll hear from Dan Lanning and Dillon Gabriel as we continue along on this edition of Talkin Ducks.
We didn't play as well as we could, right? There's no doubt about that. I don't think our guys had a lack of prep, but we didn't play as well as we can. So, I'd say every game this year I felt like we've grown. This one, we got some growing moments. So we're going to go learn from it and improve.
Kind of like it for us though. Need to get better and continue to dial in. And adversity is real. You got to find ways to win when things aren't always going your way. And we definitely made it tougher on ourselves. But Maryland played really well as well. So.
All right, there's the reaction from Dan Lanning and Dillon Gabriel after Oregon gets the 21-point win over Maryland. It was a little bit closer than that for the majority of the game. But listen, Anthony, as we said before, you can't be perfect every single game. And especially when you get late into the season, you've kind of already conquered your hurdles. Because when you look at that schedule, listen, everybody understands Ohio State, Michigan, Washington, at Wisconsin, those are kind of your big games. Then you look at Maryland and say, okay, we should win. And you're not really giving that one a second thought until you get to that week of the game. And so for Lanning and Gabriel to say that, any concern about the step down in that performance, or do you feel confident that this team, when the stakes are ramped up once again, whenever that may be, is going to be able to respond like they have in the past?
Well, I feel confident because this team is led by Dan Lanning. I mean, the things that he's doing, they're trying to keep this team going. In this game, knowing it's against Maryland, the fans are not as loud. Okay, let's create some excitement during the game. Let the big men eat. Okay, we got a fake punt return. Okay, our fake punt. Then we have a 2-point conversion, and then a touchdown reception from an offensive lineman. That is ridiculous. And let me just go back to the fake punt. Jordan Burch looked like a running back running the football when he had the ball in his hands. That was unreal. I'm telling you, it was.
I was confused. I was like, who's that big running back?
Watching that from the press box was ridiculous.
Is that LeGarrette?
I'm just saying. So when you have
you brought out a good point, Anthony, and Joey, the evolution of Dan Lanning. People need to remember this is his first head coaching gig. He's coached underneath some terrific head coaches, but this is year 3 now of Lanning, and coaches, just like players, evolve and improve. Where have you seen the evolution with Dan Lanning this season? We've seen things behind the curtain as far as are you not entertained and all the other things he's been doing to try and fire this team up. What have you seen from him this year?
What I love about Dan right now that I've seen is that he's not trying to be anybody but himself. Right, you mentioned it. He's coached under some incredible, Nick Saban was the best coach I've ever been around at creating adversity out of nothing. Right, at turning the Maryland game into like the biggest, oh my God, the world is gonna implode if you guys don't have your best week of practice ever, kind of thing. Like he was the best, and that's how you get your team to show up every week. But it doesn't mean that it has to be done the way that Nick Saban does it. Dan is himself. Dan is his, he's his own man. And the things that he tried those first couple of years, there are a couple stumbles, right? The losses to Washington, getting into those big pressure moments and coming up short. Sometimes that teaches you how you want to approach the next one. And what I love is that while he has absolutely adjusted, made those shifts to be able to win the Ohio State game in the last couple of minutes. He's still done it his own way, right? And that's what that's the type of player, that type of coach that you want to play for, right? You don't want to play for the guy that's feels like you're putting on a show he's trying to be somebody else. You want to play for somebody who's invested, who you can tell cares as much about it as you do. And that's what I think Dan has done so incredibly well, is that he's made those small adjustments to be able to win those close games and to be able to continue to motivate his teams in the not so important games, but he's done it his way, and he's done it in a way that's genuine, and the team and the fans and the university, the community can continue to get behind.
And Aaron, with all that said, with Oregon achieving a 10-win season, just 10 games into the season, by the way, he earned another one-year addition to his contract, which is, hey, listen, light a cigar. That's worth another nice little annual salary there. But the last couple of times Oregon has had a coach get this hot, the reality is they've gone elsewhere. And I know there's this buyout, and I'm going to ask this question early. Do you feel like Dan Lanning and what he's accomplishing and what he's building here, this is it? This is where the grass is the greenest, right? Is this where you feel like he builds his legacy at Oregon, or is there still always going to be that existential threat of an SEC school possibly coming and calling?
Why do you do this to me?
I was going to say, you're throwing this right on Aaron.
I want to see 300 comments below saying Aaron is going to just ruin everyone's life with the speculation.
I feel bad for you, Aaron.
Hey, I'm just creating adversity, Aaron. I'm just trying to create motivation right now.
If it's not in the rundown, I'm not answering it. What do you want me to say?
You can plead the fifth, my friend. You can plead the fifth.
Okay, can I? Let me do this. Let me take a little bit of pressure off my friend, off our friend Aaron here. Look, the difference between the answers that Dan has given and the answers that Willie and Mario gave. The others made comments like, "I'm not going to worry about that right now." Right? That's not something I'm focusing on. There was deflection. There was, hey, I'm focusing on the task at hand. We'll deal with that later. When Dan has been asked the question, he has been very clear in saying the grass is damn green right here, right? There's a difference between how Dan has handled it and the way that Willie and Mario handled it. Now, as Fentress will, may or may not think, that doesn't mean that he's going to stick around forever. But there is a difference in how he has handled it versus the others. I've softened the table for you. Go.
Okay, so I have to respond to that with all due respect. The other difference is that Mario and Willie began sort of playing little games when they had job offers coming or in hand that they wanted. I know there's this story and mythology out there that Dan could have had the Bama job. I've never seen any legitimate evidence about that. So Dan's saying it without an offer from a program that he would actually consider. Mario and Willie said all the right things when they didn't have Florida State and Miami coming at him. That's the only difference. That said,
fair.
I have softened my position a little bit on him, maybe honestly believing this is the true, I'm going to be here. And what did he say? He wants to break Bellatti's wins record. But I just part of me just still believes there's definitely some programs out there that it would be tough for him to turn down, and we won't know for sure until he does.
Why? Why would what programs? Where?
I mean, I've been through this 3 other times, and it was the same thing all 3 times. It was this belief that there's no way someone's going to leave unless they're fired, and all 3 left. So that's why, right? Like it's the history shows that. It's a good chance. Other than Bellotti, Bellotti turned down Ohio State famously, right? So I don't know.
SC.
Light went out. Maybe that was a sign to shut up.
So you're done talking.
Maybe that was
the electricity rolling.
We'll see.
I guess we'll wrap it up with this as we get to the next segment.
We'll see.
I know. Here's the thing.
You did it, Jordan. You
Cristobal played
asked
in
the
Miami.
question.
Willie Taggart's from Florida State. Dan Lanning's from Missouri, I think. I don't think
yes,
there's that tie that's greater than football or like a bloodline connecting them somewhere. Plus, Oregon's already doing what all these programs are doing, and they're the ones that gave you your first opportunity. So for me, I know I got to lob you that question. You got to jump on the grenade, Aaron, but I think this is it for him. Honestly, I really do. I think he's a lifer at Oregon, and I will put my name on that right now. All right, stick around. When we come back, plenty more Talkin Ducks. We have to get to the fact Oregon overcame some injuries. How significant will they be as we look at 1 week without their 2 studs? We'll let you know when we come back.
Just setting the brother up, man.
Welcome back to Talkin Ducks, where we just recently learned from Joey Harrington the only reason Mike Bellotti turned down an opportunity to go to USC or Ohio State was because he just couldn't give up on having more seasons with Joey Harrington. That is a bond that is just thicker than anything else. And so with that, Joey, I don't know how to segue out of this other than Tez Johnson wasn't available for this game against Maryland. And what did you see on the field from your quarterback perspective?
One, you're a liar. And I'm not gonna get blamed for that one. Two, we all downplayed it last week because of the depth of the wide receiver group, which is it's an incredibly deep wide receiver room, incredibly talented. There was one ball in the second half that gave me a little bit of pause where, for crying out loud. The young cat who's taken over for Tez from Jesuit.
We're gonna see how long it takes you to get to this.
Lowe. God. Okay. I was like, it's Keenan's brother. Anyway. Justice Lowe. He was coming out of a break, right? Gets up, makes the read, gets out of the break. Dylan put the ball out, let it go before he came out of the break, and he hesitated a minute. Lowe hesitated for just a second, bam, incomplete, they're off the field. Those are the type of drive continuing plays. It was a third down and medium. Those are the type of things that you miss when you lose a Tez Johnson, right? You still have the explosive, you still have the big play capability with Stewart, Trayshawn Holden, but those are the little things that you don't think about that continue, 3rd and 4, who am I going to go to? I'll tell you what, if it was 3rd and 4 and I was in Miami, I'm going right to Wes Welker. Didn't matter that I had Marty Booker and Chris Chambers outside. I'm going to Wes Welker. Wes Welker, move the chains, and then we make the big play, right? But if you can't move the chains, then you don't get a chance to get it to the other guys. And that's, I think, what was missing a little bit. It's important, and they're going to have to figure this stuff out as they make this stretch run without him.
Anthony, on the other side of health, Jordan Birch comes back. We already talked about him taking that fake punt. How good did he look from your perspective? Because obviously a key piece of the Ducks to be back on the field.
Well, first of all, Joey, it's Justice Lowe, who was from Lake Oswego. I know because I coached against him and he was killing us. But anyway.
But Keenan went to
Jordan Birch is a man-child. Now, I want everybody to spotlight him and watch him. Watch his first two steps. It's just incredible how fast he is at 6'4", about maybe 300, 305. And he is massive. And I was talking about the fake punt. He was running the ball like a running back. He's so athletic as a defensive lineman, yet so strong. So he makes a huge difference. So now when the quarterback, hey, you go, coming out of the huddle and get lined up, where's number one? Where's he at? Because he's the guy you need to watch because he's going to create problems for the running game and the pass as well.
Man, you got a man crush on this young man.
Yes, I do.
He's a baller.
Aaron, any thoughts? Because we got to get going here soon.
No, I think I said way too much last segment, and I'm already beefing up my security, so we're good.
I'm just glad you got that light bulb fixed, my friend. So either way, it will be interesting. I agree with you, Joey. Sometimes people don't realize just how thin that margin of error is, especially on third down situations of having your stud receiver out there that you're comfortable with. When you need that completion 2 to 3 times per game to keep drives alive, to possibly maintain the lead or get you back into the game. And so that's something to keep an eye on if these young receivers over the next 2 regular season games, or whenever Tez does come back, can continue to do that. All right, stick around. When we come back, more Talkin Ducks. Our good friend Dan Rubenstein will join us and help us sort out some of this madness that's happening in the Big Ten, courtesy Indiana. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. We are now joined by our great friend Dan Rubenstein from the Solid Verbal Podcast. And Dan, great to see you, and I got to get your thoughts on this classic matchup between Oregon and Maryland. Ducks looked a little sloppy, but they get the victory. They pull away late, and they improved to 10-0 on the season.
Yeah, it was fine. It was pretty good. And if that's what you're saying with the result of a 21-point win, team coming off of a bye, you're probably in a pretty good place as a program. Yes, the passing game was a little bit wonky, a little bit off. There were some throws that I'm sure Dylan Gabriel would love to have back. The running game didn't get going a ton until later on. Obviously, Jordan James doesn't play in the second half. But again, if you're winning a sloppy-ish performance on both sides of the ball, and those are good receivers that Maryland has. Like, this is not to take anything away from Maryland. Those are legit probably the second best pairing of receivers that Oregon has faced thus far after Ohio State, that it's good. It's good if you're able to win a game like this by 21 points and come away with it saying it was a little bit sloppy. And I'm sure as the right guard spot gets more experience with Marcus Harper out, I'm sure with maybe younger receivers getting a little bit more experience with Tez Johnson out these next couple weeks at least, that they're going to fire on more cylinders. And obviously they've played a huge number of weeks in a row, and they have the bye week after Wisconsin this week. I think this is a good sign that Oregon, when not firing on all cylinders, is still really good.
All right, now looking ahead, Oregon's on the road at Wisconsin, maybe one of the most difficult stadiums they've played in this season. They have a bye, then Washington. Is there any way you see Oregon possibly stubbing their toe over their final 2 regular season games?
It's really hard to squint and see it against either of these teams. It's a situation with Wisconsin not really able to generate a lot of juice on offense. The running game hasn't been where it's been, I guess, a few years ago, going back to Jonathan Taylor, I guess. And the firepower at receiver's not there. Braden Locke is their backup quarterback. Tyler Van Dyke starts the season. They're good pieces on defense, but I don't think the offense does them any favors in terms of complementary football. And then with Washington, they're just not the same team away from Seattle. We saw Will Rogers get benched against Penn State, and the Lions just got thoroughly outclassed by one of the best teams in the Big Ten, and that's what Oregon is. And after last year, there is going to be fire in Autzen, in the stadium, on the sideline, on the field. This is an Oregon team that is out for blood, so they don't need any extra motivation for Washington, obviously, but no, you can't really. I guess the Wisconsin one would be a little bit more likely just because it's on the road. They've played this many weeks in a row. It's not going to be particularly cold. If this was a 27-degree game, sure, I think it's right around 50 degrees. So this is just Pacific Northwest football for Oregon. I think they're going to be all right. Tough road environment, yes, but I don't know. You need to score 30, 35 points probably to beat Oregon, and Wisconsin doesn't do that.
All right, last but not least, nobody had Indiana on their bingo card as far as one of the other undefeated teams in college football, but here we are. Is Oregon versus Ohio State an inevitability coming up in the Big Ten championship game, or will Indiana possibly crash the party?
I'd say it's all but an inevitability. It's one of those situations where Indiana needed to show a little bit more against Michigan. More than 16, I think, total yards in the second half. They really struggled as that game went on. And I think that's a product of Indiana not seeing teams have to compete with them for 3-4 quarters all year long, which great. That's a good position to be in. But not seeing the kinds of defenders, that upper tier NFL level talent level on all three, I think parts of that Michigan defense, it really wore them out. It really confused them a little bit. You could see the offense struggling to find a rhythm. And against Ohio State, I think it's just going to be even more difficult. It's nice that they have a bye week. It is, Ohio State is not, as we know, an unbeatable team. But I think Indiana is a product of both being very, very good, especially given the context of a year one coach and their recent down history, and the fact that they did not play anybody in the non-conference to get them ready. They did not play any strong Big Ten team, even including Michigan. And at a certain point, you kind of have to understand what a strong team looks like, feels like, the rhythms of that type of opponent. And again, Ohio State, not unbeatable, but Indiana, in terms of depth, in terms of being there before, they have the offensive talent, they have the defensive talent, just not on the level I think that is needed to beat a team like Ohio State.
All right, Dan. Well, hey, thanks again for joining us. Don't forget, you can catch Dan on the Solid Verbal podcast and everywhere you catch your podcast as well, too. All right, stick around. When we come back, we'll talk about some of this top 5 turmoil. 2 teams in the top 5 go down last week. What does it mean for Oregon? Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Always a pleasure to speak with Dan Rubenstein. And now we kind of get to what was a chaotic weekend here, Aaron Fentress. You had 2 teams in the top 5, including your beloved Miami Hurricanes, losing and stubbing their toe, and now all of a sudden Oregon number 1 overall. They get all those votes. You were the last voter to give the Ducks a first place vote finally. So now with Oregon being the consensus number 1, and you look at their remaining schedule, on the road at Wisconsin, home against Washington, and potentially a Big Ten championship game, a lot of people are wondering, has Oregon already, Aaron, clinched their playoff spot regardless of what happens the rest of the way for them?
How's that possible? If they were to lose to Wisconsin and Washington and then not even get into the title game, that would be pretty dicey, I think. As for Miami, thanks for bringing that up. You notice they dropped like 8 spots in the AP poll. That's because
they dropped them like a rock.
That's because they'd been flirting with like 3 or 4 other potential losses, and their defense is not very good. I'm still hoping for that Miami-Oregon matchup in the playoffs, but no, I say no. You can't. 10-2, losing to those 2 teams that they have left would put them on the bubble at the least.
Okay, let me ask you one other thing. Say they split the next 2 and still get into the Big Ten title game and don't win it and end up with 2 losses out of their next 3 games. Do they still make it then?
Yeah, I think 11-2 with a loss to Indiana or Ohio State, they still get in.
Okay. Guys, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, here's a statement that I've heard as a player. Joey, I know you heard it as a quarterback. Jordan, as a receiver, as a basketball player. Aaron, as a punter, when you're shanking balls all the time. Here's what you hear. Okay, we control our own destiny. You get towards the end of the season. Do you control your own destiny or not? Do you have to worry about somebody else losing or no? You control it, and that's a great position to be in. Okay, yeah. And Aaron, you said if they lose again, all that ifs, but also they have control of it, and that's what you want at the end of the season.
So, Jordan, your question, this whole question is based off of essentially what has happened, not just with the undefeated teams in college football this weekend, but Georgia lost again, right? You've got an SEC with a whole bunch of 2-loss teams. Like there was a scenario where you could have 8 2-loss teams tied at the top of the SEC. So it's if you have an Oregon team that makes it into the championship game for the Big Ten and potentially loses, they're going to end up as a 2-loss team. Compared to the rest of college football, I think you have to put them in. And number 2, that statement makes no sense, Anthony, and not because of you, but just in general. You can't control destiny because destiny is predetermined. So if something is predetermined, then somebody else already has control over it. So therefore, you can't control it if it's already predetermined.
The coaches are not talking to you, Jory.
That's accepted language within the sporting world, though. You shift it.
Doesn't make sense.
We are getting
you as
out
a
of our
journalist,
lane.
Aaron, should know better. You should know better.
Here. We'll tell you this much. All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll take a look at this matchup against Wisconsin. Oregon going on the road to the north. A little chilly. They haven't been there since 2000. We'll let you know how they stack up against the Badgers when we come back. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Oregon going on the road to play Wisconsin. Last time they went to that state and got a victory in Madison all the way back in the year 2000. Who was the quarterback that piloted that team? Well, he is the man that chooses to spend his afternoons with us on Talkin Ducks. Joey Harrington.
Again.
And Joey, let's talk about Camp Randall. It is one of the loudest stadiums in all of college football. What do you remember about being on the road in that stadium specifically nearly 25 years ago?
I remember losing.
If you can remember that long.
I remember losing. Two falsehoods that you've uttered in this
My
show,
rundown
George.
says win. I questioned that as well too.
We
that was
did
Ron
not
Dane
win
that ran
that
all
game.
over
So
Oregon,
not only
right?
you were lying earlier. You're lying, Jordan. You take a couple weeks off.
I
I don't even know who you are anymore.
Right now.
I don't even know who you are anymore.
So it was a loss in 2000, and was it Ron Dane, correct?
That's 3 in a row. We're gonna have Fenchess replace you. Who
was
Michael Bennett. Michael Bennett. Ron Dane had won the Heisman the year before, and Michael Bennett had about 260 yards rushing against us. Through about 240 of it was on 4 carries. That place is crazy. Anthony, what's the weather going to be like on Saturday in Madison?
About 53. And
high of 53, low of what?
That's Eugene weather.
Low. That's. So here's the thing.
That's the high.
Oh man. It's low is going to be like 45, 46.
Yeah.
Like this is. I've played in Wisconsin. I played in Green Bay.
Too.
Yeah, I know. I played at Madison. I played in Green Bay. There are times in Green Bay when you get up into Wisconsin, like you can't feel your fingers. Like it is literally like it is the coldest, bone-chilling weather you've ever been around. And that's what I was potentially afraid of at this point of the season playing at Camp Randall, because Camp Randall's crazy. It is the best environment that they will play in this year, hands down, period. The students are going to have an opportunity to partake in pregame festivities all day. So they're going to be all sauced up and ready to go. Look, they're going to be crowd surfing like dummies, like stuffed clothes, like out of the stadium. It's madhouse. But they're an average team, and the weather's not going to be in their favor. And those were the things that I was a little bit more nervous about. I'm still nervous about this game, but it's not as much as I would have potentially thought. Having played as poorly as we did against Maryland this week, the weather not being, cold and snowing sideways, I feel a little bit better about it.
Okay. And Aaron, it's interesting because this will be a tough environment. But for Oregon, despite the injuries and maybe the sloppy play at times against Maryland, this is a Wisconsin team that gave up over 40 points to Iowa. And if Iowa scores more than 10 points, that's a great offensive outing for them. So what do you see in Wisconsin? Do they have enough firepower, or can they even stop the Ducks regardless of who's on the field for Oregon?
They also lost to Bama 42-10, right? And they don't have there's not one victory or one performance on their schedule that leads me to believe they can hang with Oregon. Plus, they're even talking about, media's talking about whether or not they should bench their quarterback, who has 8 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So your quarterback's not elite.
Just to say, not that it matters in this game, but that Alabama game was when Van Dyke got hurt. Like their senior quarterback got hurt, and they've been trying to figure it out since then. So just to be fair.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So you have quarterback issues. The last time the Ducks looked like they might be headed to the playoffs late in the season and stumbled, that was the Pac-12 championship game. During the regular season, was when they lost at Arizona State in 2019, right? The quarterback for Arizona State was a future number 2 overall pick and Heisman Trophy winner that we didn't really know.
Who the Bears didn't draft, by the way.
What's that?
Who the Bears didn't draft, by the way.
Oh, stop. We're not going there. But my point is, Jaden Daniels threw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, right? And Herbert threw 2 inexplicable picks late in the game, right? So Wisconsin doesn't have that type of guy on offense. So the only thing, as I've been saying for the last month, that's going to derail the Ducks in these games is if they cough it up 3 or 4 times and you create a short field and the other team gets a cheap touchdown. Other than that, there's no way. I don't care if it's snowing. There's no way Wisconsin can beat the Ducks without the Ducks basically just falling to pieces.
Hold on. Let
me
me ask you a question, though, Fentress. So what was it 29-18 or 28-9? What was the point where it got somewhat close there in the second half with
29-18?
29-18, I think, after Maryland scored.
If they go to 29-8, right? We said these exact same things about Maryland. There's no way they could possibly do it. They don't. But you go 29-18 at Camp Randall at nighttime when this, and now all of a sudden those players start to realize, like, oh my God, like, it's not like I got people at Autzen here helping me out. Like, this could be slipping away. That's the part that just makes me a little bit nervous, right? You get into that situation where it's a little bit closer than it should be, and all of a sudden those sauced up student sections start to kick in.
All right, well, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to give you our score predictions for this one and let you know which Duck really needs to step up as we close up shop on this edition of Talkin Ducks.
You know what it's like to take over a program and get your guys in the system, establish the culture. What do you think about what Luke Fickell's done at Wisconsin over the past 2 years?
Yeah, I think Coach Fickell's a great coach. I actually got to play against him when I was at Georgia, and he was at Cincinnati in the Peach Bowl, and he had a really, really good team there. I think he's proven that he can develop teams. We came down to a field goal barely to be able to win it, and it speaks just to the kind of culture he can create. And you see pieces of that coming together for him now at Wisconsin, and I think he's doing a good job.
An update on Jordan Birch and the right ankle, and also Jordan James, since limited exposure there in the second half.
Yeah, continue to evaluate, get those guys back. Right now, early in the week, we'll take a lot off of them, and then see how they feel. But I anticipate that we should be able to see them.
Back right.
Coach, do you feel like there are any particular holes within this Wisconsin unit that you guys can kind of expose or take advantage of this weekend that you guys are looking at right now?
You want me to tell you our game plan is what you're saying?
Game plan, no, just
Like, hey, this is how we're going to attack them? I'm not telling you that.
Welcome back. Time now for our road to victory, brought to you by Guarantee Chevrolet, as we just heard some more sound from this Oregon team. And Anthony, Oregon opens up as 14-point favorites on the road against Wisconsin. Give me your score prediction and which player either needs to step up or what the Ducks have to do on the road here.
Well, I think Oregon covers that. Joey and I had the same thoughts with going back to Wisconsin in November. I thought it was going to be a cold weather game. And I don't care who you are and what you say. If you're on the West Coast and you're not dealing with cold weather and you have to go play in it, it's mentally tough. I don't care who you are, you still think about that coldness. When you hit somebody, it hurts. You want to be on the field, you don't want to stand on the sideline. So there's a factor there. But I don't think that's going to happen because it's going to be too warm. So when you look at Oregon, there's too many dudes. Jordan Birch is back on defense. That's going to create some problems. And Dylan Gabriel, he's the guy that touches the ball every offensive snap. He's your quarterback. He's the captain of that ship. And that's all you need. And you got a good offensive line to protect him. Somebody will catch the ball. He will get the ball somewhere. And then hopefully Jordan James is back. I don't know if he's injured or not. But still, hey, give the ball to Noah Whittington. He's doing his thing. So Ducks will cover, no problem.
All right, Joey, score prediction, keys to victory.
I'm going 38-17, but it's going to be similar in that it's not going to. It's going to be. I think it's going to be close in the third quarter. I still think that this environment, this pressure, this understanding we're the number one team in the country, everything that's riding on it. This crowd is going to be going absolutely crazy. It's going to be an environment unlike anything Oregon has played in on the road this year. So I think there's going to be some adjusting. But again, I'm so comforted by the fact that Jordan Birch is back. I'm comforted by the fact that Dylan Gabriel has played 637 games as a collegiate quarterback. And those are going to be the type of things, the type of guys that in the end make the plays on defense, get the ball to the right guys on offense, keep your head and just grind one out. So yeah, I think they'll win by 3 touchdowns, but I think it's going to be a closer game in the third quarter.
All right, Aaron.
I had 39-17, pretty much copying the last game. I'm going to go down to 33-17 just for the heck of it. For all the talk about the Maryland game, the point spread was 23. They won by 21. So it's not like they really underachieved by that much according to the betting line. I'm surprised this is 14 points. I would definitely take Oregon minus the 14. However, things happen. And without Tez Johnson, maybe the offense does slow down and maybe it is relatively interesting in the second half. But the bottom line is that their offense isn't good, Wisconsin's. So the only way they're going to put up points, have a chance to win this game, is if the Ducks turn it over, because Oregon's defense is really good. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is that if we think, or anyone thinks, the Ducks can contend for the national championship game, this shouldn't even be a thing. This game should be a beatdown. And if it's not, I'm going to come in here with major questions next week. But I just don't believe it's going to be that close. I think the Ducks roll.
Yeah, I'm with you. I got Oregon winning 35-13 in this one. I think it's just too much on offense. My key is they got to complete at least 40% conversions on third down. Be able to pick up those third downs on the road, keep those drives going, whoever it is, find them, and get at least 2 sacks on the quarterback in this one. So either way, should be fun. One test on the road for Oregon is all that stands between them and a home matchup against Washington. Can the Ducks remain flawless and get to 11-0 for just the second time in program history? We'll find out this weekend. Thanks again for joining us on this edition of Talkin' Ducks.